Welcome to Build Out with Jim Kunkel, your go-to broadcast for learning more about business in the real world. Your host, Jim Kunkel, who is an accomplished professional in business development, sales, and marketing, and is a technical content creator along with being a rising influencer on LinkedIn. On Build Out, you'll get the latest information and knowledge from subject matter experts from across the globe. Okay, let's get this Build Out broadcast started. And here's your host, Jim Kunkel.
Hey, welcome to another episode of Build Out. I'm Jim Kunkel. Joining me today is Jamie Cooperstein from Cooperstein Hospitality. Jamie, welcome.
Thanks, Jim. Happy to be here.
It's great to have you, and we're going to be talking about a very important topic, and that topic being the power of first impressions. But before we get into our conversation, could you do a favor for the viewers? Could you cover your professional background and also talk about your company?
Sure. So a little bit about myself. My background is I was actually a luxury concierge at the Rittenhouse Hotel in Philadelphia, and then moved on to work at a luxury condominium property. And that spanned 10 years, and I loved every single day of it. And after that 10-year stretch, I actually wanted to do more and give back and find ways to continue to coach and train others to deliver great first impressions and deliver great service. And the company that I now own and operate, called Cooperstein Hospitality Consulting, it's amazing because it doesn't feel like work. And basically, I pull all of my expertise from that 10-year span, being a concierge, working with really difficult customers, being in the trenches every single day. And I work with organizations and I work with individuals to make sure that they are providing great first impressions on behalf of their customers. Sometimes that looks like me going in and doing a service audit and assessing what the customer currently sees on a day-to-day basis. And oftentimes that also looks like me being brought in as a trainer and facilitating an educational session with their team.
Well, those 10 years came very handy for you, I would say. I can only imagine what daily interactions were like. Like you said, you probably majority of the time dealt with very pleasant people, but occasionally you probably had the difficult customer or client or two that you would have to deal with. And, you know, really that first impression is so powerful. And let's kind of open up and talk about, you know, what exactly is the power of first impressions. And, you know, studies and experience for many of us really show that within that first few seconds of meeting somebody for the first time, you really start to establish an impression on that person. Could you go a little bit into some of the details regarding, what exactly is the first impression?
Sure. So your research tells us that it only takes up to 7 seconds. And I actually think you can make a judgment far sooner than 7 seconds, but up to 7 seconds to really formulate a first impression of somebody that you're meeting. And this is long before they even open their mouth. And we'll get to that in a little bit. But I want to talk about perception and really the first impression that somebody is making. This has to do with how they're being perceived, both for their own personal brand. Let's say it's for an interview, personal branding is everything, or how they're being perceived from how their company is being perceived based on the first impression that that individual is making on behalf of their company. And perception is key because perception is reality. So what I like to say, and just to use an example from my background, is let's say I was on an 8-hour shift as a concierge behind the concierge desk. I could have been on point, giving fabulous first impressions for 7 hours and 58 minutes of that shift. And all it would take is 2 minutes for me to let my guard down. And in that 2 minutes, maybe I pull out my personal cell phone. Maybe I stop making eye contact and a guest approaches. Their perception of Jamie in that 2-minute time span is not so great, right? But in actuality, I was an excellent concierge, but perception is reality. And that's why it is so key to make sure you're always putting forth a great first impression.
Yeah, research really shows that, once that first impression is, the foundation's created, it can be very difficult to overcome. What are some of the tips that you have for a professional who's looking, for good client, good customer service when it comes to that first impression? What are some of the things that they should do to help really start that off in the right direction?
Sure. So it absolutely begins with a smile. And I know that this is nothing we haven't all heard before, but I do want to talk about this a little bit. So the same way that negative energy is contagious, positive energy is contagious as well. And I talk about frequently in my training sessions that, let's say you have something going on in your personal life and you're having trouble shaking it. And now you get into the workplace. To borrow an expression from my father, you have to find a way to check it at the door and really bring forth that positive energy, that smile for the duration of your 8+ hour shift. And then frankly, when your shift is over, you can go back to being cranky and upset and whatever you need to do. But during the time you are truly on display, representative of that company, you have to smile. And as I said earlier, positivity, that positive energy is so contagious. Not only does the customer want to be around somebody that's smiling, your fellow colleagues want to be around a coworker that is also smiling and happy to be there. So first and foremost, a smile is key. Okay, no such thing as too big of a smile. I also want to talk about eye contact, body language, both really key. 50% of communication is nonverbal. 50%. So if we go back to this concept of perception, this means the person that is standing before you is making a judgment of you, most likely long before you even say anything. So they're just simply perceiving your body language. Do you have your hands crossed in front of you like this, which certainly signifies that you're not very approachable. Are your eyes diverted and not really looking straight ahead? Are you not kind of leaning in squarely to whoever you're facing? All of these things are key in presenting yourself in a positive light. I also want to talk about how you are dressed. Okay, for your personal brand. I think that can look a few different ways depending on maybe where you're interviewing or the environment that you're in. But I think as a general rule of thumb, it's really key that nothing that is on your person would be distracting or take away from the value that you have to offer that particular company, your intellect, for example. So if you have bright pink hair is fabulous, but that probably would be distracting unless you were let's say interviewing for a position where bright pink hair would be fabulous, right? If you're interviewing for a job at the Rittenhouse Hotel, bright pink hair is probably not the right first impression you're trying to make. Same can go with facial hair if it's in transition, I like to say. You either want to be clean cut or you want to have a full beard, so to speak, or a full mustache. Jewelry can be very off-putting if it's too large or too bold. Proper hygiene for fingernails and appropriate fingernail length. I mean, these are getting into very, very nitty-gritty specifics, but all of these things can truly distract from the positive first impression.
Yeah.
I can also go into talking a little bit about the importance of being polished, but still having a personality. Okay, when you are putting forth your personal brand, that positive first impression, or first impression at an organization, you need to absolutely not say anything, but once again is going to offend or have somebody look at you as somebody that is, less polished than you really are. But we absolutely want you to have a personality. I always say you don't want to come across as robotic, but polished and personable is the way to do it.
Yeah, those are great ways to really, make a good first impression. And so critical and important. And prior to the stream, you and I had talked a lot about, when it comes to, like you said, hairstyle, your presence, your attitude, and things like that. The other thing, too, we're talking about first impressions on us working with clients, but also, too, we can establish first impressions on our prospect and our clients that we meet for the first time. And what are some of the things that you or others, myself, we should do when we meet clients or prospects for the first time when it comes to that first impression?
Oh, so many things, Jim. Very simple first things that we can do is just using time of day in our greeting. So something as simple as saying good morning, good afternoon, good evening, trying to insert the client's name. In that conversation, I would argue to say at least twice, certainly in the greeting and in the closing, but if you can throw it in somewhere in the middle, that would be key as well. I also love to see, rather than just an abrupt salutation at the end, whether it's, over the phone, in person, or via email, but saying something to the effect of, is there anything else I can help you with today? Is there anything else I can do for you? These kind of service focused part of the conversation shows that you care and that you're looking forward to continuing the conversation and not just, abruptly ending it as if it was a transaction. And I'll use that word transaction again by just saying we want to make the person that we're interacting feel as if they are our only customer or our only potential customer, right? Nobody wants to be made to feel like we're just one person of many, in line at the deli counter. We want every person we're interacting with to be made to feel like a VIP and that they are the only person we are dealing with on any given day. Bigger picture concepts from a first impression is certainly looking to anticipate the needs of that particular client, kind of getting one step ahead of anything that they might ask for. Another concept I love talking about is the art of under-promising and over-delivering, and what that might look like in terms of client interaction. Let's say you need to follow up with X because the client has asked for it. The cardinal sin would be telling the client that you'll have it for them by the end of the day. And now the end of the day comes and whoops, you didn't get to it because there were a couple other fires to put out. Okay. So you always, always, always want to under promise when it comes to timing on something. And better to say, I'll have it to you by the end of the week. And then boom, when you can deliver it the next day, you're a hero because it happened far sooner than they were expecting. So I think that is a key element to making a positive first impression. And then the last thing that I'll mention from this question, Jim, is looking to personalize the experience for a customer. And what I mean by that is before you talk shop, before you try to close a sale, before you really get into the nitty-gritty of business, I think it's important to establish rapport. Ask the person how they're doing. Do you have any kids? Are you vacationing anywhere soon? What did you do this weekend? And all of those conversational answers, you're going to file those away. And then every time moving forward that you have a conversation with those person, let those things drive the conversation in an effort to build rapport. And then that ultimately is how you're going to do better with business prospects, because you now have a friendly, you don't have to be friends, but a friendly relationship with that individual. And I really think that's a huge, huge success in trying to make a positive first impression.
Yeah, I really think that once you do establish a good approach when it comes to that first impression, it's something that you're going to repeat over and over. It's going to become, human nature for you. It's going to become something that's just going to happen organically no matter what. You don't have to put a lot of thought or effort into it. The last over 2 years, we spent virtually meeting people and having virtual first impressions. Now that we're getting into face-to-face meetings, these topics, what you're covering right now with me today, are really critical for us to start to think about as we start to meet with clients and prospects out there. And we want to give them a really great first impression. The other thing, too, that can happen on a first impression, myself as a salesperson, yourself as an entrepreneur, you might meet somebody, probably not so you, but there are probably those watching right now. And when I was younger, I was the same way. I would meet people who were clients or prospects for the first time if I met them. And I might form judgments that are not based in reality. How can I best deal with head trash like that, where I'm prejudging people maybe incorrectly?
Oh, that's very difficult to fully eliminate just based on how each of us, whatever prejudices we may come into
Yeah.
that interaction. The first thing that comes to mind, Jim, and this may seem out of left field for a second, but I was just having a conversation with the client about this yesterday, is when it comes to certain hospitality-minded businesses where there are customer-facing employees, one of the ways that you can eliminate those prejudices is by actually having a uniform for the employee. I think it eliminates any type of bias from perhaps what neighborhood they come from or what their financial situation is based on what they're able to put on their body in terms of their version of a work appropriate outfit. So I really am a firm believer of a uniform for certain businesses. So, of course, not everybody's going to look identical based on how hair and other attributes, but to the best of our ability to remove the bias by having everybody dress the same, I personally think is a very key aspect. I think we also just have to be open and give people a chance, and even stepping outside of the world of business and just trying to be a good human being. I think it's really important that we look past kind of the superficial whenever we can, the exterior, and really try to build rapport and have a conversation. And that's just part of being a good person. And rather than making that judgment in the first 7 seconds, give yourself 30 minutes, an hour, half a day, and then you'll get to know somebody a lot better. I'm not sure if that fully answered the question, but those are just some thoughts that come to my mind. Uniform and really finding ways to build rapport and trying to break down those barriers.
No, that was perfect. And I think when it comes down to it is the building rapport. And that's something you learn over time, but also too, when you have coaches like yourself working with individuals or working through company programs, it's really beneficial for any professional who's looking to do, if you're doing concierge services or if you're a salesperson or if you're a customer service agent, no matter who you are, you're going to benefit from really taking what you provided here during this episode, but also putting it into practice. And I think that the other thing too, that as you become more experienced, you become a little bit more in tune with what your customers are really looking for when it comes to customer service or how to be handled, how to be treated. And building rapport for me has always been to build confidence in my clients and my customers, but also let them realize that I'm going to be honest with them. I'm going to provide them the information they're looking for, and I'm also going to be someone who's going to be looking out for their interests, because when I look out for their interests, that's a great opportunity for them to do and want to do more business with me. They feel more comfortable with me, and I become part of a solution than just a point of contact when it comes to I need a product, a service, or customer service work. I guess the next question I would have for you is, do you have any, and again, without divulging any client information or personal information, do you have any examples or let's call them bad examples of poor when it comes to first impression? Do you have any of those you could share?
Yeah, I can give kind of a generalized example that comes to mind is, I think oftentimes based on somebody's age or their race or their gender, we're quick to make snap judgments of what they might be capable of. So the example that quickly comes to mind is, I'm going to use another hospitality example, but pretend that we're all a server at a restaurant, and a particular table of 4 gets seated for lunch service. I think it's very easy for that server to make a snap judgment on what that service experience is going to be like, what type of customer they're going to be, what they might be looking to spend, their behavior, based on some of the factors I mentioned earlier. That's unacceptable, right? We have to treat everybody as if they're the same. And that goes back to things I said earlier about treating everybody as if they're a VIP, that they're your only customer. So that's just a kind of an example that I think of where it's unacceptable to make a snap judgment. I'm not sure if that fully answered your question, Jim. I can talk a little bit more also just about first impressions in general, but did that answer your question?
It definitely does. And if there's additional you want to share, please definitely share that with the audience. I appreciate that.
Sure. The other thing I'll add is that, in 2022, as a customer, nowadays, we have highest expectations that we've ever had before. So where it might have been satisfactory to wow somebody just by meeting expectations, that's no longer true, right? The only way we're really going to wow a customer or wow a prospective employer or wow a prospective client is by exceeding expectations. And I usually, if I'm in the middle of a training, have a fabulous slide that details this. But if you can picture 3 faces on a screen, one face where they're exceeding expectations, one face where they're meeting expectations, and one face where they're falling short of expectations. The only time the customer is going to be made to feel overjoyed is simply going to be the exceed expectations. Certainly, if you fall short of expectations, they're going to be upset, angry, disappointed, etc. But once again, simply meeting their expectations, that is not our goal, and that is not acceptable in 2022. So doing a lot of the things I've talked about so far in this webcast today, those are the ways that we really can make sure we're striving to exceed the expectations of others.
And I also would say that today, with supply chain issues, logistical issues, current business climate, now more than ever, not meeting expectations, exceeding expectations is very critical. And that can also lead us to the aspect of if there are shortages, if there's delays in product delivery or some service interruption, being able to stay ahead of that and utilize good customer service to deliver that information, because most people, they realize what's going on, and as long as you're upfront with them ahead of time and better prepare them, that's going to be a stronger relationship you're going to have. So it can work for it, when you're trying to close a deal and you're exceeding expectations, or if you're in a situation where we're dealing with a current economic issue or some type of other external issue that could impact business relationship with your customers.
Yeah.
Jamie, we covered so much regarding first impressions. Is there anything that we didn't talk about during this interview that you'd want to leave with the viewers?
The last thing I'll say is that, just to remind everybody, is that people have a choice of where they conduct their business. And 9 out of 10 times, following a poor service experience or a poor first impression, they're going to walk and they're going to take their business elsewhere. So that's really why it is so critical that your first impression, you get it right the first time, right? We've all heard the famous line that you only have one chance to make a positive first impression. And that's really what it's about, is that if you don't make a positive first impression, well, I'm going to take my business elsewhere. So I think that's kind of a perfect end note, so to speak, is just to remind everybody that consumers have a choice. And you really need to find a way to wow and get it right the first time around.
So, Jamie, how can people find out more information about you and your company? And then also, are you on any social media platforms that people can follow you?
Sure. Thanks for asking, Jim. My website is www.jcoopconsulting.com. I love writing. I have an active blog on there that I'd love for folks to take a look at and feel free to comment on. I am quite active on LinkedIn. Please feel free to follow me on LinkedIn, just putting my name in the search feature. As well as Instagram is the other social platform that I use. And you can find me my handle is @jcoopconsulting.
Excellent. One comment that came here from Carl, and he had here, his if he has a livelihood dependent on working in hospitality, I think I would starve. How does one sustain the everlasting exceeding expectations? Any recommendations for Carl?
Great question, Carl. So you're right. It is exhausting to, as I say, reach as high as you possibly can every single second of the day. But but truly, when you're on the clock, or when you're trying to put that best foot forward for the customer, you have to find a way to give it a 10 out of 10, and then give yourself a break thereafter. Step away. Don't necessarily schedule back-to-back meetings every single day if you can't give it the 10 out of 10 for each of those meetings. I know that's not sustainable for myself. After this webcast, for example, I'm going to take a break before I go on to my next endeavor, because I need to make sure for the next endeavor I'm back at a 10 out of 10. So I think that's probably my best advice. But truly, in order to wow, in order to exceed those expectations, you've got to dig deep, and you do have to give it all that you can.
Perfect way to end this broadcast. For those who are watching, and also watching in the replay, make sure that every Wednesday you do check out the Build Out live stream. Have some very great topics coming up, and live guests as well. Jamie, we didn't talk about, are you on, I know LinkedIn, I want everybody to connect with you through LinkedIn, but do you have, are you on Facebook? Do you have any other type of social media presence?
Besides LinkedIn, Instagram is the other one that I'm primarily using these days. And once again, the handle is just at jcoop consulting. Would love for folks to follow along there if you'd like. But yeah, LinkedIn and Instagram are the two main ways, as well as going to the website and following along on the blog.
Excellent. Follow her website, also to connect with her on LinkedIn, and also make sure you follow her on Instagram. Jamie, thank you so much for this conversation. This was an important topic to cover.
My pleasure. It was great to be here, and I look forward to continuing the conversation with anybody that would like.
Perfect. Okay, everybody, have a good rest of your day. Jamie, have a good rest of your day as well.
Thank you so much, Jim. I appreciate it.
All right, everybody. See you next Wednesday.
I hope you found value with today's Build Out broadcast. Make sure you connect with Jim on LinkedIn and subscribe to his YouTube channel. This way you'll be notified on new live streams and when new content is released. Please give today's broadcast a like and share with your connections and colleagues. Thanks for watching, and please visit buildoutproductions.com for additional content and to join the mailing list so you can keep updated on other streams and quality content from the creators on the Build Out Productions team.